Hello everyone and welcome to Tiger's webinar today. Thank you very much for joining us. My name's Emily and I'm the content editor here at Tiger, and joining me today is our Managing Director, Rebecca Siciliano. So today we're talking about how to hire in times of uncertainty. Brexit negotiations, as I'm sure everyone knows, are changing daily. We're not sure what's going to happen in the next few weeks, but we do know that we've already seen changes in how we recruit. So Bex is going to introduce herself and then we'll dive straight in.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. So for those of you that don't know, I'm the MD here at Tiger Recruitment. I've got about 15 years recruitment experience. That's always been within specialist business support, which is the area that Tiger specialises in. Our client base, obviously we've got clients across financial services, professional services, property, creative. So the information that I'm giving to you is going to be sort of a mix from a range of industries. Obviously we've got our private and hospitality divisions as well. So we're seeing sort of a real variety of things coming through from all areas.
Okay, fab. Right, so I suppose starting with the legal part of it, legal requirements aside and what's kind of going to be enshrined in law, what are some of the ways that businesses can go above and beyond in improving retention and attraction?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting area because, you know, European law is something that's been integrated into UK businesses since 1973. So you know, now's the time where we're seeing things like the agency workers regulations, the Swedish derogation, they're becoming standard practice for all employers. Post-Brexit, we're going to see that there will potentially be some changes there. There are no new major changes announced, but everything that we can see, it's sort of leaning towards giving the UK a bit more flexibility and making sure that, you know, it's strengthening employees' rights. There was the government's good work plan that was announced, and some of the changes that they're talking about within that are all to sort of look after the employees and make sure that they benefit from it. I would say it's really going to be about sort of, you know, looking at what's going to have the lowest impact for businesses, and also making sure that, you know, as a company, you are going to have to go above and beyond, because we're really sort of moving into a market that is candidate short, and it's a skill short market, and we've got to sort of try and, you know, look at creative ways of retaining candidates.
So on that, I suppose, in terms of examples, one of them that we've noticed is, you know, settlement status and assisting employees who might have an EU passport. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So settlement status, again, we're not going to see huge, whilst the program has launched, it's still in its testing phase. So it's not going to be until after the 29th of March, hopefully, that sort of goes live for everyone. The good thing on that side, obviously, the government has abolished the £65 fee that they were charging, but we're seeing, you know, companies are going to have to guide their employees, make sure that you're showing your staff like what they can be doing to apply for that settlement status, if it is something that applies to them. You know, that can be in the form of workshops that you're holding, sitting down with staff, sort of looking at who you do need to look at solutions for, and making sure that candidates know all the options available to them.
Fantastic. Another thing that we're seeing also is obviously the national living wage. That's now gone up. How can companies use that to their advantage?
Yeah, so national living wage is an interesting one because, again, we're going to see that increase later on this year from £7.83 per hour to £8.21 per hour. So that's April that increase is going to happen. But we're already seeing that a lot of companies are adopting the London living wage, which is, you know, it's not a legal requirement. It's something that's been set by the Living Wage Foundation. But that's, you know, calling for candidates to be paid £10.55 per hour in London. We're seeing a lot of companies that are offering that, especially sort of, even if you're looking at areas like hospitality and retail, which is one of those areas which is going to be hit with a skill shortage post-Brexit. It's really important to sort of pay your staff a little bit more than what that national living wage is.
Of course, because London being quite expensive, so
exactly.
They're looking, yeah. Cool, and I suppose the other thing that's happening in April, of course, is the second year of the gender pay gap reporting. What can we expect in terms of that?
Gender pay gap reporting. So second year, additionally, obviously, there's going to be the mandatory CEO pay gap reporting coming into play as well. I guess the flow on from that, like a lot of people aren't realising that gender pay gap reporting can actually impact your brand. So if people are sort of seeing figures about certain companies that are behind the curve ball on that, it doesn't make them attractive to attract and retain employees as well. I guess what we're looking at is some of this is driven by lack of women who are in senior positions within the company, but also there are certain industries that just historically attract more men. So I think a lot of that, it's about, again, you can just do the reporting, but it's also looking beyond that at how you build your talent pipeline to attract a more diverse range of candidates through making sure that you're showcasing your female role models to the business, training your hiring managers and recruitment teams in unconscious bias, and making sure the language that they're using isn't just leaning towards one gender.
Really inclusive, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just things like, so many companies out there are offering fantastic perks and benefits at the moment, but making sure that they're benefits that are attractive to a wider audience. Like, are you offering childcare vouchers, for instance? All those sorts of things are important.
Cool, fantastic. So I suppose the next big idea is this idea of the creative attraction trend. So it's not enough that you're just advertising a role and hoping that the best talent is coming to you. We've got to look beyond that and see, how you can really get the people that you really want in your business. So my first one, and the one closest to my heart as a marketeer, is what role does marketing have in attracting candidates?
Yeah, so I think we're quite lucky at Tiger because we do recognise that marketing is so important for recruitment as well. But there are a lot of HR teams out there that aren't necessarily working closely with their marketing teams at all. So, it's really about looking at the content that you've got out there, whether it's on your website, on your, careers, brochures, anything like that that's out there. And is that the right material that's going to attract the sort of business that you want? Emily, I'm sure you can sort of agree that if we're sort of coming to you saying, right, these are the kind of people that we want, then it gives you good scope to go out and do.
Exactly, and your branding and everything like that. Obviously, a company, even for someone like a recruitment company, we want a particular brand because we know that brand is going to attract the people that we want to work with. So definitely important.
And that means that then, you can get all this amazing content on your careers page that when people are looking at that page, it's attractive to them, and that prompts them that prompts them to sort of walk through the door as well. Things that you can do, like make sure that you're doing branding and reputation exercises, show your marketing team that material, make sure that you're getting feedback the whole time about what it's like to work for the company, what it is that people like about the brand, why they're interested in the organisation when they first joined. All these things are going to help you in terms of your hiring strategies as well.
And of course, we've got things like retargeted ads where you're targeting people in terms they may fill out an application but don't actually submit it and things like that. So bringing those two together so you can really, I suppose, follow the process through.
Yeah, and that's so important. Like so many, companies will get people onto their website and onto their careers page, but there's just not enough there to sort of prompt them to apply at that time. If you're using those retargeted ads, then it means that once they're off your website and onto the next company page, your brand keeps popping up as a bit of a reminder for them. So that's really important.
Yeah. And I suppose moving on from that in terms of technology as well, it's impossible to ignore these days. It's kind of infiltrating every element of the workplace, I'd say. How can hiring managers take advantage of tech when they're recruiting?
Yeah, so we're definitely seeing more companies make use of videos to attract candidates to the roles, as well as using videos as part of the interview process. So it can be those video applications that are coming through. It could be even setting up, the first stage interviews through VC just to save some time. But another thing that's really important, like so many people use their mobile phone to apply for jobs, so make sure that your website's optimized so that people can easily apply for a job through their mobile phone. They can attach a CV from their mobile phone if they want to.
You can do that now.
Yeah.
Files on your very, very good.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we're hearing so much about AI as well. Love it or hate it. It's one of those things, like some people can see the benefits, other people just don't like that idea of speaking to someone that is not a real person and a robot. So, that it does have its sort of time, place in recruitment as well. It can really make the screening processes a lot faster as well if you're enhancing AI technology too.
And I suppose from a marketing perspective there, having chatbots and things like that can, it kind of assists candidates when they're not sure. If we can have those first initial processes that is controlled by AI, then we can get the journey started quicker and things like that as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And then from there, it's just like looking at that candidate journey all the way through. Like, is their journey conversion optimized? Like, can they just go onto your job advert? Can they easily see the next steps? Is it one simple apply now button that gets them through to the page that they're after. Even things like, whether you're including invites for leadership events that your company are hosting, or suggesting other roles that could be of interest to that candidate as well. So they're not just seeing one position, they're just seeing all these different things coming through from your company.
Yeah, fantastic. And of course, Google for Jobs is a big thing that we've seen over the last year in terms of websites, making sure that your website job schema is set up for Google Jobs, and using a diverse mix of advertising strategies, of course, would be a big thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, again, whether you're using the out-of-home advertising, radio, Google AdWords is something that is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger as well. But then, there's so much you can do on social media as well. So many, you've got employees now that are profiling their potential employees. They would be going onto
their social media. Check LinkedIn,
check their pictures, all of those things.
All those type of things.
But you're getting candidates that are doing that for the companies they're hiring as well. We'll get candidates come to us and tell us if they've seen an unfavourable review on Glassdoor. They'll look at companies' Instagram pages as well. It can be such a useful tool to have a company hashtag that people can go through and see all the exciting things you're doing in your business.
That's it. So we've kind of hooked them in there with the technology bit, but from there, it's really important, I suppose, to maintain that candidate communication. So can you explain to me what we mean by that?
Yeah, so candidate communication, it's not just the ad itself. You can have an ad that's written, amazingly, but it's not. It doesn't sort of mean that you're going to get that candidate through the door. It's that process and it's that engagement that you've got with the candidate. So you've got the two things, like reputation is such a big thing. So if people are talking negatively about your business, then it's as easy as, I applied for a job there and I didn't hear back from them. And then that starts to create a bit of chatter out there. So again, I've mentioned Glassdoor. It's such a popular site now and a really good way of attracting candidates. If you're a potential employee looking, you can't go on and look at roles unless you're giving a review on the company that you've worked for a previous company. So it's really important to kind of use technology like that. If you really have to sort of work on your existing staff to attract new talent as well. We trialled doing a careers video on our website and had really positive results and really positive feedback from that as well. And then sort of just making sure that the candidate can see from the moment that they apply to your ad to the first interview, the second interview, all those stages in between, right through to receiving their contract and start date. It's really important to keep everything very slick, very timely, deliver on what you say that you're going to do.
Yeah, because of course there is sometimes a risk of candidates dropping off, so you want to be in control of that situation the entire time.
Yeah, and keep that process quick. Like, as long as a candidate knows what the expectations are, they're fine. It's just if you tell them that it's going to be a 3-stage interview and then at the end you sort of drop on them that there's also going to be another assessment or something as well, it can kind of put people out of it.
Yeah, cool. And I suppose another way that we're thinking about attracting and retaining talent is, of course, diversity. Many clients I would hope have diversity targets already, but how can they, what role does, I suppose, diversity play in attracting talent?
Yeah, so I think this is going to be particularly important as we sort of move into a more candidate short market. So you do have to look at sort of investing and bringing through people from a more diverse range of areas. Some things I would suggest, definitely setting up some key partnerships and sponsorship opportunities. So that could be with schools, communities, charities that are going to assist your talent pipeline and are in line with your brand as well. We're even hearing about talk of using reform prisoners to create certain real roles in certain areas as well post-Brexit. So there's lots of different
they'll do the job.
Yeah.
I suppose one of those ways too is alumni targeting as well.
Yeah, also massively important. Make sure that you've got an alumni network. Make sure that you are advertising all of your jobs through that network as well. Sometimes if you do sort of have recommendation incentives as well, that can be a very positive thing. But one of the biggest things that marketing teams love as well, and that HR teams love, is being able to say, this is a candidate that we're going to showcase who left the business and has come back. Those boomerang candidates that they've gone out, found that the grass isn't greener, and they've returned. So they can definitely be your biggest
sort of advocates
for attracting.
Yeah, fantastic. So I suppose we've touched on this already with the candidate communication, but to dive into it a little bit more, it's streamlining your hiring processes. So obviously when a good candidate comes on the market, you want to snap them up really, really quickly, but we are seeing lots of clients miss out because they are taking too long. How can hiring managers kind of stop this or assist other teams within the business to really capture that talent from the outset?
Definitely important. Like you've got the dream CV there. You know that they look ideal for your role. You've got to then get them through the door. So candidates that are applying for jobs, they're not just applying for one job. They're going to be applying to a range of different companies. You've got to make sure that you stand out at that initial point as well, and standing out for the right reasons too. Yeah. So it can be, as I mentioned earlier, about setting the expectations around the number of steps in the process. Nobody wants to, find that they're at first stage and in a position, and then they're waiting a long time to get to second stage as well. You've got to build up your relationship with your candidates through the hiring process. They're going to remember that person that really sort of embodied the company and made them feel like they were being looked after throughout the process. And almost, if it's that HR person that's giving them tips on, what to say when they're in front of the hiring manager, that's going to help as well. So really building those relationships. And good candidates, they're just moving so quickly. You just have to make sure that you're keeping the process very clear. Educate your hiring managers. If someone internally is traveling and you're struggling to book in that first stage interview, make sure that they know if they don't prioritize this, they're going to lose the candidate. That's where that technology around video calls can come in really handy on those sorts of things as well. We're even seeing companies that are using skill testing, candidate assessments. You might want to get those out via email links sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So it's not holding up any offers. Again, some companies are just looking if there are assessments that they can actually do on the job once they've started and use that as a training tool whilst the candidate's in probation.
Yeah, I was going to say temp to perm is another thing that we're seeing a whole heap of. An increase of 42% we had last year with our clients from 2017 to 2018. Is that also a viable option for hiring?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with the low unemployment rate that we're seeing at the moment, it's going to mean a stronger permanent market. But again, we're seeing a lot of companies that this is a good way to get people through the door faster. And it means that, you can get them in, start doing their training and then worry about organising the contracts whilst they're there.
Fantastic. Okay, now we move on, I suppose, to a big buzzword at the moment, or a buzz idea, which is this idea of work-life balance and flexible working. So essentially, we know that flexible working is kind of a necessity now.
Yeah.
And that the idea of a work-life balance is changing. Could you tell me how that's changed?
Yeah, definitely. Work-life balance is such an interesting thing again because it's something that's been around for centuries as well. It was actually Robert Owen, who was a Victorian social reformer, who came up with the term 8 hours labour, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. That was back in 1817.
It hasn't really changed since, which is kind of scary.
No, but the thing is, times are changing, and we're seeing this come up more and more. Like, it's a different society. Like, everyone's connected through technology. You don't have to be in the office to do your job, and most of us will be connected when we're not in the office. One of the biggest things we're hearing from candidates that are looking for new roles is that they want the flexibility, they want the work-life balance, they want that sort of day that they're able to work from home, and it's just something that's so important. Like, it's not just a short-term thing. We're going to keep moving in that direction as well. Yeah,
I've seen people, and I think we've noticed this as well, where they're saying it's not actually a benefit anymore, it's a bit of a necessity. So, we've seen that 84% of working parents say that work flexibility is the number one most important factor in a job. 80% of working parents are saying that work-life balance ranks number 2. And for the millennials, which I know they're 50% of the workplace within 2 years. So for them, it's the biggest priority in their professional lives, beating wealth and leadership opportunities, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just the salary, I suppose. It's about, providing that whole holistic thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing is this whole topic of presenteeism,
yeah.
where, you do have that culture where people are at work, if they're sick or just because they feel like they shouldn't be the first person to leave their desk at the end of the day, or they don't want to be the person that's calling in sick. And I think it's about moving away from that culture as well and making sure that it's about sort of, doing the best you can when you're at work and not just being there and not being productive when you're at work.
Yeah. So obviously we've talked about flexible working, how important it is, but on a practical level, how can businesses integrate flexible working into the workplace?
Yeah, definitely. It's such a big thing, and I think if the idea of flexible working is new to your business, you do have to introduce things gradually. You can do that by making one change and then measuring the impact on the productivity of the business. We introduced flexible working at Tiger. We made it clear that it was going to be something that would start off on a trial basis. We needed to see there wouldn't be a negative impact on performance, our standards. We need to make sure that clients were still being serviced all the way through. So it's been a bit of sort of give and take and just kind of trying things out, seeing what works and seeing, making sure people know that flexible working doesn't mean that you've got an extra day off. Yeah. It's about being given that trust to do your work.
And trust is, I suppose, such an important thing, and people feeling that they're trusted to kind of work from home as well. So the culture of trust is really important in building that, I suppose.
Yeah.
You touched on this already, but in terms of challenges, what are the challenges in flexible working and how can they affect the business?
So it can be as easy as technology, like making sure that your company has the right technology in place to allow flexible working. Employee engagement as well, like how do you make sure people still feel part of the team if they don't have that interaction within the office? Going out for lunch with someone or grabbing coffee, things like that, that communication has got to, still, you've got to find a way of incorporating that.
Yeah.
And trust. And, it's not just for managers as well. Like sometimes it can be that the employees don't feel trusted, they don't feel trusted by their employer.
Right.
And it's, that can sort of have a negative impact.
Yeah,
as well.
So that's where I suppose internal communications and things like that really come into play in terms of saying, look, we have a policy and we want you to use it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, and I think in that case, you just have to make sure that you've got the technology, the internal communications are there, you've set up sort of other ways of keeping in touch with people, and people, you're measuring performance rather than anything
actually
else.
Turning up.
Yeah.
And I suppose, what are the wins for flexible working? Like, I suppose you'd hope that there be increased staff retention and attraction there.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's just kind of responding to what people want, and they will stick around if they feel like they've got that flexibility in the workplace. It's just a even cost as well. It's such a big thing that you don't have to sort of worry about that desk space in your office if you.
Yeah, of course. If you've got people hot desking and things like that, fantastic. Yeah. I mentioned the millennials earlier. I'm going to come back to them because I think, millennials are increasingly looking for, I suppose, a sense of purpose. And like I said, they are going to be 50% of the workforce from about 2020. So how can businesses, I suppose, harness this need?
Yeah, so I think definitely with the millennials, there was a Mercer survey that was released that showed that thriving employees are 3 times more likely to work for a company with a strong sense of purpose. However, only 13% of those surveyed companies offer an employee value proposition.
Wow.
And that's one of the things that's really important for millennial candidates.
Yeah.
They do want to see they've got those opportunities for progression. They're going to sort of want to see what the next step is for them in their career.
And sometimes quit more, I suppose, at a faster pace than we would traditionally expect.
They want advancement and they want it quickly.
That's great. Fantastic. And I suppose the idea of a work-life blend is one of the things that Tiger released an ebook recently, and one of the topics that we discussed was instead of having a balance, having a work-life blend. So essentially, I suppose, having the two come together instead of competing against each other. Can you explain what this would mean to us practically?
Yeah, so work-life blend as well, it's something that we looked at with a recent ebook that we released as well. Given the way we're so connected on our mobiles and we're away from the office, but you're still sort of checking your emails first thing in the morning or last thing at night, it really starts to blur the lines between what's work and what's personal time. So you do have to kind of look at, it's not a case of work is cut and dry. You've got to combine the two and you've got to balance the two. We recently interviewed the CEO of a company called Open Blend, and they've got a business that focuses on employee results rather than just being present at work. And she had a really, really interesting description of work-life balance, and she described it as 2 opposing concepts where one goes up, another has to come down. So realistically, we've got this 24/7 culture. We're on all the time. It absolutely makes sense that as an employee, you have to think about the well-being of your employees as well. You have to prioritise work-life blend. It's
because you'll burn out otherwise.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And especially with flexible working, like I was speaking to our financial controller, who she has a day working from home on a Friday. She switched it to Wednesday now because otherwise she was logging on Friday, doing some work, and then thinking, oh, I'll just log on tomorrow as well and do a bit more.
Yeah.
So
you're working more when really that
absolutely
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. It's got to be a focus on productivity, and again, remembering that every single employee has got a different idea of what work-life blend is. Like, do you have staff that want to get to a gym class, in the morning or after
working
work?
parents, or
working parents that want to have more time with their children. Like, work-life blend means something different to each person.
Fantastic. Cool. So I suppose the next big topic is, of course, remuneration and rewards. So whilst, these things like flexible working and benefits are fantastic, at the end of the day, we do need to talk about, I suppose, salaries. So what is the current state of affairs in terms of remuneration?
Yeah. So what we're seeing on this side, like obviously that unemployment rate, lowest in 40 years at 4%. Salaries increasing, and we're seeing the rate of wage growth at its highest since the pre-financial crisis.
Wow.
But if you're looking at that on a wider scale, across sort of the last 35 years, it shows a really different picture, where we're seeing that wage growth is on the rise again, but it's not got the same peaks that it's had in the last 35 years.
Okay.
So that shift that's creating, we're seeing this, candidate short market, and there are less of those good quality candidates out there. But we're also seeing that the ones that do want to move for an increase in salary.
Right.
So our salary survey, which was done on London-based candidates, showed that people are moving for an 8 to 10% increase in salary.
Wow. Okay. So we're not going sideways on salary. We're definitely going up.
Yeah, and people need to, if they need to, be able to afford London, really, and things in their life. We're seeing, even clients that are prepared to offer up to 15% increases, or even buying out bonuses.
Wow.
And that's for, PAs and executive assistants
as well. Fantastic. So I suppose, as you mentioned, what are candidates looking for? They want salaries that are going to cover a mortgage. Do they want relocation costs? Why are they looking for that higher level?
So again, a lot of it just comes down to the cost of living in London, but what you have to do on that side, not every company is going to be able to afford to just sort of pay up the salaries. Yeah. It doesn't work. So what you have to look at in that case is why do people want these increases in salary? And if we can't afford to pay it, what kind of benefits can we introduce that are still going to give people what they're looking for? So again, that comes into you doing sort of research and matching your packages to the wider market trends of your workforce.
Yeah.
That might mean whether it's looking at sort of the polarized needs of multi-generational workers. Do your benefits packages include things like financial support, mortgage advice if younger workers are looking to get a foot on the housing ladder? Do you have any support for employees that are looking after elderly parents, or parents that want those childcare vouchers? There are so many different benefits that you can add in that won't necessarily be a hike in salary, but they're going to make a big difference.
Add value.
Yeah,
and that's the most important thing, I suppose, at the end of the day. Okay, cool. So career progression. Again, we touched on this before in terms of millennials really looking for career progression, and at a rate that I suppose is faster than we've ever seen before. But how important is the idea of career progression for candidates when they're looking for a new role?
Yeah, so important. Candidates that are coming to us are saying they're leaving because they want progression in their next role, and they don't feel that they can get that. So as a company attracting staff, you've really got to be transparent and make sure people know where they can go. People are going to ask questions about progression. You've got to have the answers. You've got to be prepared for those questions as well. You might have someone who has never expressed an interest in moving forward and advancing, but then you get to their end of year appraisal and they're asking what they have to do to become a manager. So it's something that does come up. So you have to just really sort of look at if you're what can you offer, whether it is an upward step, sideways step, what is the progression planning and the succession planning for your business.
Because most businesses, I suppose, will have that to an element. It doesn't matter what size you are as well. You know, there's always going to be a next step for someone, rather than if that's just upskilling or anything like that. And I think it's, I suppose, really important for hiring managers to recognise and understand, not to be put off by that as well.
And that's it. It can be confronting for a hiring manager because they know that the next step is very possibly their job.
Yeah.
So they should feel affronted by it. So it, you know, I would say the companies that we see that have got the best retention rates are the ones that when the employees join, they can see what the path to progression is, and they can see what all the other lateral movements are that they can make.
Yeah.
If they can sort of branch into another area, whether that is sales, whether it's account management, you know, all the different things that are open to them, and just having extra initiatives and extra programs they can get involved with. Like, are there any, you know, social committees that they can get involved in? If they've got an interest in, you know, well-being, can they sort of start up an initiative on that side for the business?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily role specific either.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just kind of creating those opportunities that are going to make people feel more fulfilled and enriched
and give them a sense of purpose and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I suppose that's kind of it in terms of bigger issues. So I know it's a lot of information for the last, I suppose, 20 minutes or so. So can you give me a bit of a summary, I suppose, for hiring managers who are looking to hire in the next few months?
Definitely. So first of all, you've got to work with your marketing team. Make sure that your marketing team are working with you as well to make sure and get that content out that's going to get you the best representation of your company and attract the best talent for you guys as well. Streamline your hiring processes. Make sure that you're doing everything you can to make that hiring process as simple as possible. Keep your candidates engaged and keep them informed all the way through. The other big thing, flexible working, it's the norm. It's not a benefit anymore. You've really got to try and incorporate it into the workplace in whatever way is practical and works for your business. You know, we're even hearing about it in the hospitality industry now, which doesn't sort of
so based,
absolutely. Yeah. And then the other big thing, communication is key. Make sure that you're enhancing employee engagement surveys, find out what's attracting your newest talent, find out what's keeping your best talent. So all of those sort of surveys, information that you can glean from your employees is what's going to help you in terms of attracting and retaining.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us today. If you do have any questions, feel free to get in touch. And if you are interested in our ebook as well, that can be found on our website. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.